Hey adventurers, so today is going to be kind of a weird video for the channel, something that is very drastically different than anything I've ever done before, but something that is long time coming for me. This is something I've been thinking about for quite a few years and have just not actually ever done it, but I'm ready to do it now, and I think that it's a good time and a fun video for me to do. And this is basically just me defining some terms that are some words, really, some terms, some ideas that are important to me and to this channel, and to just kind of the idea of what this channel is. And so I'll go through them. Nothing terribly complicated, nothing terribly weird or hard to understand. Probably everybody understands most of these things that I'm talking about already, but I wanted to do it anyways. And so we'll start with the first word that I have, or that I wrote down, and I don't have a ton of words, a couple. I don't know how many exactly I have, but I don't have a ton of them. But the first one that I have is magic. And of course I talk a lot about fantasy on this channel and magic and stuff like that. And that's definitely, some of those things will get talked about as well, but we'll start with magic. I don't have any reason why I'm starting with the ones that I'm starting with, other than that's the first one that's on the list. So the dictionary that I'm using here is our childhood dictionary. This is the Webster's 9th New Collegiate Dictionary. I believe it was published in 1988 is what the publisher page on the front of this book said. I might be wrong about that. I know we also have some other dictionaries as well, but because this is one that I used as a child when in all my schooling and everything, this is one that I just kind of naturally gravitate towards. All right, so magic. There's two definitions here, three actually, so we'll go through those real quick. Let's see, the use of means as charms or spells believed to have supernatural power over natural forces. B, magic rites or incantations. And then 2A, an extraordinary power or influence seemingly from a supernatural source. And then B, something that seems to cast a spell or enchantment. And then 3, the art of producing illusions by sleight of hand. So that's the first entry for magic that's here. The second entry says this is an adjective. So the first one I should have mentioned was a noun, but the second one is an adjective of or relating to magic. So obviously that's relating to the noun magic is what that's getting at. And then 2A, having seemingly supernatural qualities or powers. And then B, giving a feeling of enchantment. And then let's see, the third one that they have is magic, and this is a verb. So they have to produce, remove, or influence by magic. So those are the definitions that they give. So a noun definition, an adjective definition, and a verb definition. Next one I want to go to is fantasy. Fantasy is a noun. Definition 1 would be like hallucination. Definition 2 is fancy, especially the free play of creative imagination. 3, a creation of the imaginative faculty, whether expressed or merely conceived as A, a fanciful design or invention, B, a chimerical or fantastic notion, or C, fantasia. D, imaginative fiction featuring especially strange settings and grotesque characters, creating especially unrealistic or improbable mental images in response to psychological need. An object, also a mental image or a series of mental images as a daydream so created. And then 6, a coin. Number 6, a coin usually not intended for circulation as currency and often issued by a dubious authority as a government in exile. Then we have the fantasy as a verb here. To portray in the mind, fancy. To indulge in a fantasy or reverie, daydream. So those are the ideas of fantasy that we're playing with, or that I'm thinking of when I'm talking about fantasy. And oftentimes, especially on this channel, because it's so focused on books, it is talking about a created imaginative world, book, fiction, story. Then let's go to literature. The noun, literature. 1 is an archaic use, but literary culture. Number 2, the production of literary work, especially as an occupation. 3, A, writings in prose or verse, especially writings having excellence of form or expression and expressing ideas of permanent or universal interest. B, the body of written works produced in a particular language, country, or age. C, the body of writings on a particular subject. D, printed matter, as leaflets or circlets. 4, the aggregate of musical compositions. So there's quite a few different variations on how literature can be used there. And we'll get a little bit into kind of my definitions of some of these things as we go, or towards the second half of this video. I just want these dictionary definitions so that we can have a baseline for where we're starting. Let's go to storytelling real quick. And I suppose while I'm there, I should also do story. Story is a noun. First one is an archaic. That means history. Number 2, A. An account of incidents or events. B. A statement regarding the facts pertinent to a situation in question. C. An anecdote, especially an amusing one. 3A. A fictional narrative shorter than a novel, specifically short story. B. The intrigue or plot of a narrative or dramatic work. 4. A widely circulated rumor. 5. Lie or falsehood. 6. Legend or romance. 7. A news article or broadcast. Then the second definition for story as a verb. 1 is archaic, to narrate or describe in story. 2. To adorn with a story or a scene from history. Then we also have a third definition for story, which is also a noun. This is not relating to books or storytelling. This is relating to buildings. So I don't really feel the need to go into that one. Let's see, but we've also got a couple different other things that go along with this. Storyteller is a noun, a teller of stories as A. A relater of anecdotes. B. A reciter of tales, as in a children's library. C. A liar or fibber. D. A writer of stories. So then let's go to some other ones that'll be pretty obvious why I'm picking these ones. We'll go to erudite or erudite. Erudite or erudite, both. An adjective, possessing or displaying erudition, learned. Well, let's go look at, because it doesn't specifically say anything, let's go look at erudition, which is, continuing, it's just the next entry here. Extensive knowledge acquired chiefly from books, profound, recondite, or bookish learning. And then a synonym would also be knowledge. And then also let's do adventure. Adventure, a noun. 1. A. An undertaking involving danger and unknown risks. B. The encountering of risks. 2. An exciting or remarkable experience. 3. An enterprise involving financial risk. And then the second entry is the verb entry, and we have 1. To expose to danger or loss, venture. 2. To venture upon or try. There's also some other definitions. 1. To proceed despite risk, and 2. To take the risk. Then we also have adventurer, so I might as well do that one because that's the next entry here. This is of course a noun, one that adventures as A. Soldier of fortune. B. One that engages in risky commercial enterprises for profit. 2. One who seeks unmerited wealth or position, especially by playing on the credulity or prejudice of others. It's kind of an interesting definition there. And then I have one more that I want to specifically look at because this is something that as of recent weeks, months, you could say, fairly recently, I've started thinking more in this direction, and that is bard. So let's take a look at the entry that we have for bard. Noun. 1. A. A tribal poet, singer, skilled in composing and reciting verses on heroes and their deeds. B. A composer, singer, or declaimer of epic or heroic verse. 2. A poet. So that idea of a bard being somebody who tells tales, who tells stories oftentimes through verse or poetry, that's something that's kind of been resonating with me a lot recently. And I'm not so much looking at the D&D class of a bard that's kind of been popularized, that's kind of how people see bards as being portrayed, but more of somebody who's trying to tell stories oftentimes through poetry or verse or some more grand scale than just events. So that's where we're at for the dictionary definitions, and I want to just go through some of my own thoughts on some of these things because I think they're important. Most of my thoughts coincide and align very closely with what's in the dictionary. For one of them though, literature, I want to give kind of my own viewpoint on that word and what it means and what I view as literature. And so when I say literature, I mean any written work whereby you can learn something. And so that's pretty much anything that's written. Pretty much anything can be learned. Usually it's especially in storytelling form. In some sort of narrative constructive form is usually what I'm talking about with literature. It doesn't have to be fiction, it doesn't have to be true story or anything like that. It can be either or whatever, but it can also be music, it can poetry, hymns, whatever, songs like that. There's absolutely that side of things. People talk about leaflets and pamphlets and stuff being literature. And I do agree with all that, because the point of that is that you're going to be learning something from those leaflets, hopefully, or whatever. So that's kind of the way that I approach literature, is any written work whereby you can learn something. And there's definitely some works that it seems like you will be able to learn less from. Sometimes it's not always about the story, though, or it's not about the message that the writer is trying to get across to you. Sometimes you can learn stuff about writing, or about how to develop a certain type of character, or how to develop a world, or something like that. So literature doesn't always have to just be about the story, and if you can take something away from that story and apply it to your life and grow as a person. No, sometimes it can be, I'm reading this book because I want to learn how to portray humor better in books type stuff. Or maybe it's I think that this is something that I can learn. This is not a great example, so I'm going to learn how not to do this by reading some more poorly written material or something like that. And so there's pretty much always a way to learn from what you're reading, and so it can pretty much always be considered literature. On another note with that literature, though, so literature, if I remember correctly, literature comes from Latin, and so it's a Latin term. However, if you look at the English, what it would have been, if you took it from Old English and carried that same idea down, it's more of bookcraft is the idea that comes across, or the kind of the word, the translation that would be used there. And that kind of really is interesting to me. I like thinking about that, and thinking about the fact that literature is not just, it's not just a fancy word for written material. There's also a quality, a craft to it that implies something a bit more challenging, a bit more that requires some study and some effort to go into it before it can become something of high quality. And I kind of like that idea. I like that concept of bookcraft. All right, I've got a couple more story. I want to mention this one. This is kind of how I view the term story, and what I would define it as: a recounting of events in an interesting way. Sometimes people recount events and it's technically recounting the events, but it is very dry, very boring, and not at all interesting. And so I think when you try to, maybe that would be considered an account or a history even. But if you are trying to tell story, there's a level of engagement that goes into it that causes it to be more interesting than not. I wanted to do the name of this channel is an Erudite Adventure or an Erudite Adventure. It depends on who's pronouncing it. I've seen both of them as being correct according to my research into the word erudite or erudite. But this phrase, an erudite adventure, this is a phrase that I came up with, or me and my sister came up with when we were creating this channel. Something that would span more broadly than just her and I, but that would actually be something that could be taken and applied to other ideas. It's more of an idea than a person type thing. And so, an erudite adventure, what does that mean? The pursuit of knowledge through literature. Or the second definition, a journey of the learned. So for us, the pursuit of knowledge through literature becoming a journey of the learned. And so it's kind of this idea that through literature, through reading, through studying poetry or music or whatever it is that we're doing, we are becoming more knowledgeable, becoming more learned by this study. So yeah, the pursuit of knowledge through literature becoming a journey of the learned. That's kind of how I approach this channel. That's kind of the goal of this channel, is for me to become more learned, more knowledgeable, have a greater understanding of things. And the easiest way, the quickest way to do that is through reading. You can learn a whole lot by reading. Of course, you can learn a whole lot by actually doing things as well, and that's important, but there's a lot of things that just aren't available for me to do. I can't learn to fly a dragon. This is kind of a silly example, because that's not the type of thing that we're talking about when we're talking about learning from reading. But there may be some concepts that go into that are worth exploring, but that we can't do. Maybe some things about courage or honesty or truth or grit or whatever it is that you can learn from that you can't learn without having something that forces you to learn those sorts of things. And so that's kind of the goal of this channel. That's kind of always been the goal of this channel, is to become better read, more well-read, if you want to say it that way. Branch out and to grow as readers, as people, and to gain a wider understanding and become more learned in whatever it is that we're reading or studying about. I can tell you that I have definitely learned a whole lot more about the fantasy genre and about the sci-fi genre since I started this channel. I've also learned more about writing, about storytelling, about what it means to be a storyteller and how to create and what it means to be creative. There's a lot of things that I have learned through this channel and through being on this Erudite adventure, which does not mean that you're already at the end of the journey. It means you're at the beginning of the journey, and it's okay to learn as you go and to grow through that journey of that adventure of seeking knowledge and understanding. And so that's what this channel is about. That's what the goal of this channel is. I'm really going to leave it there. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite adventure. Hopefully this was somewhat interesting to some people. To most people, that would be great. But that's kind of the idea of an Erudite adventure, is to be on this journey of seeking to learn more. Yeah, thank you guys for watching an Erudite adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and our social media is linked in the description down below. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.